committee of councillors in Edinburgh has declared the city won't rename streets or remove statues of figures linked to the slave trade. Instead, it will shine a light on the dark aspects of the city's connections with the British Empire, please. The decision comes following a review led by Jeff Palmer, Professor Emeritus of Life Sciences at Edinburgh Heriot-Watt University, who has long argued in favour of reinterpreting statues of figures linked to the slave trade rather than taking them down. To give his thoughts on this story, I'm joined by Professor Nigel Biggar, Regius Professor of Moral Theology at the University of Oxford. First of all, Professor, fantastic to have you on. But the first question I want to lead with is, why would a statue need reinterpreting?
Well, it's because some people think that Britain is systemically racist and that systemic racism derives from a continuing colonial mentality. And that this mentality is expressed in our celebration of colonial heroes. So we have to pull down the statues or reinterpret them, and thereby we can repudiate our alleged systemic racism.
It's bonkers. I mean, do you see this as a win? Instead of tearing it down, we're reinterpreting it? Or should we just not capitulate at all and say a statue doesn't need interpreting or reinterpreting?
Well, if I ruled the world, that's my position. I would say, by all means, let's have a debate and the presentation of different views on the significance of statues. Of course, yes, it's a win in that I think it's better that we retain and explain than pull down statues or erase street names. But the problem is that the explanation that is published by statues will, I expect, be highly politically biased. So we still haven't won, but retain and explain is better than pull down or erase.
I'm with you. I'd probably go hardline myself. It's also been announced that Edinburgh will issue a public apology to all those who suffered as a result of Edinburgh's involvement in colonialism and the slave trade. I don't think any of those people are still alive. What is this waffle?
No,
should they be apologising?
I have to say I find it quite absurd because between us and the period of slave involvement in slavery in the 1700s lies 200 years.
Right.
And between us and then lies the abolition of the slave trade and the institution of slavery by Britain, the first major state in the world to do that. African states didn't do it, Arab states didn't do it, Britain did it, the first to do it. And then we spent 150 years suppressing slavery all over the world. So between us and slavery lies 200 years of noble anti-slavery endeavour. So there's the idea that somehow we now need to repent of slavery or we have to identify ourselves with slavery and repudiate it is crazy.
It is a nonsense. I want to take this back a step, though, to ask a really simple question of what is a statue, or what's the purpose of a statue? Because it seems to me that these activists seem to think it's highlighting someone's level of purity or something, and that if someone isn't pure enough, they need to be ripped down and or contextualized. What is the purpose of a statue?
Well, people raise statues to folk who are regarded as admirable in some respect. So let's take the memorial to Tobias Rustat in Jesus College Chapel, Cambridge. It was erected because he was a major philanthropist, and they erected it to him as a philanthropist. Yes, it turns out he did invest in the slave trade, but the memorial was not raised to him as an investor in the slave trade. It was raised to him as a philanthropist. And so we raise statues to people who have done something good, and we celebrate the good thing they've done. But like all human beings, every person who is celebrated in the statue will have flaws. There will be negative sides as well as positive aspects. But we didn't raise the statue to celebrate those.
Right. And a statue.
So, for example, just to go back to Edinburgh, Calvin, there are statues to the likes of David Hume, the famous 18th century philosopher, who was celebrated as a philosopher. Now, it happens that he made disparaging remarks about non-white peoples back in the 18th century, as many people did. But he's not celebrated for that. He's celebrated because he's a fantastic philosopher.
Yeah. And surely the Christian stance is that we're all fallen, we're all flawed, and you might celebrate someone's success, but they will always have something negative in their lives too. It's not about it's about looking holistically at a person, isn't it? And that's what history should be, holistic. The final question I want to ask is, Is this a positive case? Will other universities follow suit? Will other cities follow suit in keeping statues up and recontextualising rather than the Black Lives Matter activist stance of tearing everything down and starting from year zero?
Well, I certainly hope so. And the government's official stance that retain and explain should prevail appears to have prevailed in this case. I don't know why Edinburgh has decided to take this route, but if it's decided to follow the government's preferred norm, then that's good. But the next stage of the struggle has to be to ensure that there is a properly liberal, diverse set of explanations. Because at the moment, it's just been revealed that the membership of the Edinburgh Slavery Group doesn't contain a single historian and contains only people who happen to be progressive and woke. So we need political diversity.
The Edinburgh Slavery Group, just leave it right there. Professor Nigel Biggar, Regius Professor of Moral Theology at the University of Oxford, thank you very much.